Brilliant. My name is Tim Gibney, and it's indeed a pleasure to be talking with you today. Today I wanted to do something just a little different. I want to talk to you about Peter Wright, but I'm going to ask Peter the questions so that you, the listener, will get a really good idea as to why Peter brings so much to the table. He's had such a varied and wide life in terms of circumstances and situations. So when he speaks about life, it really is about life. So how are you doing today, Peter?
Tim, thanks for being here. I'm great, and it's really good of you to come on in the very early days of the Peter Wright show on Spreaker.com. And I'm sure that the questions you're going to ask me are going to be of great benefit to our listeners. So over to you.
Okay, Peter. Over the last year, we've talked about a number of things, so I know that, but the listeners don't. So what I'd like you to do first is let people know about your roots. Where did you come from, and what is your story?
Wow, where I come from is easy. I was born in London, England, United Kingdom, and then at the young age of 5.5 moved to Rhodesia in southern Africa, which is just north of South Africa. My father had a job with the British High Commission there, and he then left that and went farming. That's the start of what was a very long story, which would take more than this episode to relate. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Tim, and ask you to give me some guidance as to what parts of my story you think the listeners might like to hear.
Okay, Peter. In fact, I guess when I asked you that, it was just to give a little bit of background. But what intrigues me the most is the number of times that you have had your own property absconded from you, for lack of a better word, stolen, maybe even a better word. And so what I'd like you to do is I want you to talk about the day that I believe changed your life, when you lost your first property.
Sure. The losing the first property wasn't the watershed moment of my life. It was one of a number of sad occasions which I had to recover from. And that was more by default than anything, because that would have been my house in Salisbury, Rhodesia, when I was leaving, because Rhodesia was about to become Zimbabwe, and I was worried about the future for my kids, and I was leaving to move to South Africa. And I couldn't sell my house. I tried to sell it for what I owed the bank as a matter of pride. There were no takers. Even more people were leaving than buying houses, so eventually I just took the keys to the bank and said, there you are. That was the first of 3 properties that I lost. Do you want me to go on?
Yep, that'd be great.
The second one was when my business went bang, and that we'll deal with, I think, separately in a moment. And much the same, that was in South Africa, between Johannesburg and Pretoria, where I had what we called a small holding. You'd call in North America an acreage, 5 or 6 acres, with a nice house. I had some horses. My business had gone bang, but because of the changes coming into South Africa in 92, 93, 94, squatters had invaded the area where I lived, and the result of that was property prices plummeted. And again, I couldn't even sell the house for what I owed on it, which was not very much, about half it's what I paid for it. So again, I went to the bank, gave them the keys, said, over to you guys. And that was the second time. Back to you.
What does it take for a person that is very responsible, as you are, I've noticed over the past year, just to say, I've got to go, and not try to complete what you wanted to do?
Wow, that's a hard one, and I've had several different circumstances. I think the most traumatic one for me was related to losing my business in South Africa in many ways, in that I tried really hard. I employed, I think, about 8 or 9 people in 2 different businesses, and through a combination of bad luck, mainly civil war in 2 of my major markets, and, to be honest, a little bit of lack of foresight and planning on my part, the whole thing came crashing down like a house of cards, and I had to let good people go, and I ended up with nothing. But I think, as traumatic as it was, when it was all said and done and I lost everything, it was a great sense of relief that I was like at the bottom of the pit, and the only other way was up, and that's what I did.
Peter, I've always enjoyed your use of words, because they're different than North American, but I think they're more descriptive. The bottom of the pit. Could you just explain a little bit more about what you mean by the bottom of the pit for some of our younger listeners?
Bottom of the pit's when you drop so far from what you had, you can't really go any further. And a lot of people at that point in their lives turn to drink, and I didn't. And that's only a short-term solution and does you more harm than good. Other people commit suicide, and yeah, I'll be honest, I never contemplated suicide, but I got a very real understanding of why people not only contemplate it but carry out the act.